Electronisounds Audio, the YouTube channel for you.
Hey, what's happening, guys? It's Dean from Electronisounds. Stick around. Today, we're going to be checking out the new version of Riffer. Riffer is a creative MIDI sequencer from Audiomodern, and it's available for desktop and also for iPad. We're going to be checking it out on both today. Come on, let's have some fun. In this first example today, we're taking advantage of the new polyphonic sequencers inside of Riffer, and I've got all 4 sequencers assigned here. We've got Riffer tuned to a C Spanish Gypsy scale, and I've loaded Riffer inside of AUM here on an iPad Pro. I've got it set up so when I press play in it sends a MIDI start MIDI clock signal out to the digitone and also to the Electron model samples. In this example, the drum beat is coming from the model samples, and we've got 3 melodic sounds coming out of the digitone, and we've got a melodic bass sound coming out of the Waldorf Blofeld. I'm going to switch over to direct sound and show you guys what this sounds like. Be sure and subscribe if you're into this kind of content. I'm trying really hard to hit 10,000 subscribers before the end of 2020. On this channel, I talk about everything from creative MIDI sequencing with iPads and with desktop to creative MIDI sequencing with Eurorack. I talk about new gear, I talk about old gear, we talk about sound design and building live jams, all that good stuff. Be sure and subscribe. So what is the Riffer Creative Sequencer, and how do we actually use it? The Riffer is going to allow you to create random melodic content at the touch of a die, and this content is going to be generated according to the scale that you've got chosen inside of the app. You can see there's quite a few different scales here, and we can also change the root key that we're working with here. So if we'd like to work with an F harmonic minor scale, we just choose F and harmonic minor. The notes that the app is going to generate are going to fall within this window here. So you can adjust the amount of notes in this window to more notes, to more octaves, or you can even scroll down to where we're working with lower or higher octaves. And every time we press the die, it's going to generate a new melodic pattern. That pattern will play back depending on how we've got the quantized settings set here on the left. So we can play the pattern back at like 16th notes, 8th notes, quarter notes, even whole notes, which means that each of these notes that it generates is going to actually hold for one full measure. One of the neat things about the new version 3 of Riffer is that we actually have 4 separate sequencers now that we can assign to different outputs. We can go into the MIDI section and we can click on these buttons over here and we can assign whatever MIDI output we've got connected up to the iPad, and we can decide what channels we want to send on as well. So each of these sequencers can be sent to a different MIDI channel. That's how in the first example I was sending MIDI information out to different units. One of the neat things as well is that we can decide how many times our root note will appear in the patterns that we're generating randomly. So for instance, if we're down here, maybe between C2, and let's make this range a little bit less as well, so that maybe our range of notes for the app to generate, let's say we're working in the key of, let's say, C, Arabian, B, right? And maybe I'm trying to create a bass line here. I've got C2 all the way up to C3, so we've got the window in an octave, and all we have to do is hit the die here, and it's going to go ahead and just randomize and create different patterns within this scale. Now what we can do is, if we don't want all 16 notes to play back every single time it generates a pattern, we can click up here and we can change this number. I like to use 10, I think is a good sort of a default. And what it does is it grays out some of the notes and it does not play those notes even though they're on the screen. So you can see here we're getting some gray notes in addition to the black notes. We can also put the tie on and the sustain on, and it will start generating ties and sustains between the notes. The ties and the sustains can help you get some really interesting patterns as well, and some sort of 303 like glide patterns sometimes also. The new density feature of the V3 app is really a ratchet feature. I think they should have probably labeled this ratchets rather than density, because ratchets is a really common term for this. And what it does is it splits each individual step up to more steps. So for instance, we can put a ratchet here and we can put the ratchet either down at the bottom, and we can have like this step into just a couple of steps, or we can push this all the way at to the top and get a lot of different notes hitting on this one note. If you don't know what a ratchet is, it's kind of like when we go bump bump brrr, bump 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 brrr, brrr, bump bump bump. So it's putting more than one note. You can actually see the number of ratchets that it's dividing this step into down here beneath the black line. So we can divide this step up to 8 different individual ratchets here, or any subdivision of those amount of ratchets. And if you have the ratchet number, let's say we put this up to 5, now when we scroll and we create new patterns, it'll randomly choose 5 of those steps to have the ratchets. If you don't want to have any ratchets, you can just click the arrow next to this and put that to a 0, and then when this generates, it's not going to generate any of those extra ratchets on your steps, and your steps will just be single steps. So the V3 of Riffer features 4 of these individual sequencers now, and you can split these up over to different outputs, or you can use maybe just 1 or 2 as needed. We can also shift the way that Riffer is playing back the patterns. We can play back the patterns forward, we can play back the patterns backwards, or we can do a combination of forwards to backwards. We can even hit the R over here and we can continue creating more random results. If we're not happy with the pitch that Riffer is spitting out, we can easily transpose here at the bottom. We can go down an octave, down 2 octaves, up an octave, or up 2 octaves. So that gives you a little bit of flexibility in real time as the sequences are playing as well. You can shift any of the sequences in real time by just clicking over to that sequence and moving the octave shift at the bottom. Another neat thing is we can actually turn on and off each of the sequencers individually by highlighting it and then tapping it again. It will stop that currently playing sequence. So you can really do some neat things by turning things on and off as needed as well. But the most neat feature in Riffer that I think is the ability to set it up so where it will automatically generate new random content every X number of bars. If we click the little infinity symbol over here, now the number next to that represents how many bars this pattern will play before it randomizes and creates a new pattern for us. So for instance, if we were to shift this to 4, and maybe we would go in and shift all of these to 4, right? If we've got all of them playing, now the sequencers will play 4 bars and then they will generate a random new melodic pattern. This is a really neat feature for live jamming if you don't have a collaboration partner in the studio and you want to get this set up so if maybe every 4 bars it changes to some new melodic content, or every 8 bars it shifts to some new melodic content. It's kind of like jamming with a friend in the studio who's never off key. Absolutely fantastic. In this example, we've got Riffer connected to my Eurorack system, and I'm using the Riffer sequencers to sequence 2 different melodic parts. We're in a F minor pentatonic scale today. I'm using the Apple adapter directly out of my iPad Pro, and we've got a USB cable over here plugged into the Poly-In Poly 2 MIDI to CV module, and that's allowing me to get the iPad talking to all of this gear. Let me switch over to direct sound and I'll show you what this sounds like. In this example, I'm using 3 different sequencers from Riffer, and we're set to a C minor scale. I've got each of the sequencers set to play a whole note, meaning it's just going to hold that note for a full measure. So now each of these 3 sequencers is spitting out a random combination of notes that is all going to be in the key of C minor, and each of the 3 sequencers is going to hold the note that it generates for a full bar. I've got all 3 sequencers routed into the Virus Darkstar, and we've got kind of a keys/chord sound. The purpose of this is that we're creating random chords that are all going to be in the key of C minor. Now when we do this, some of the random results that it spits out are going to be dissonant and are going to be clunkers. But the whole point here is to create some neat random results on ways that we're not exactly expecting. So I've got the Virus plugged into my Akai MPC Live, and we're just going to press play and record the results for a couple of minutes. Then I can go back through the recording and I can listen to those chords that we've generated. Anything that doesn't sound dissonant, we can trim out and keep, and we know that it's going to be tuned to the scale of C minor. Before we check out these chord examples, I'd like to show you how I've got the iPad connected up to the virus. I'm using the standard Apple brand adapter here, and I've got some links to these Apple adapters down beneath the video if you need to pick one up for yourself. Make sure you're using the Apple brand adapters and not the cheap ones you find on eBay, because those typically don't work for very long. I've got this USB out routed into my audio interface. Today we're using the Novation Audio Hub 2x4. Unfortunately, Novation has discontinued this particular interface. You might be able to find one used on eBay, but they're pretty hard to come by. The reason I like this interface so much is it has a powered USB hub here right in the front of it with 3 ports of USB power. And this is allowing us to plug in the IK Multimedia iRig MIDI 2 adapter, which gets us that 5-pin MIDI able to go from the iPad directly into the Darkstar. I've got a video specifically on using 5-pin MIDI with iPads and iPhones if you want to get a little bit deeper, and I'll put a link to that video up in the corner. Here I've gone ahead and chopped out a few of those chord sounds, and I've loaded them into the Akai MPC Live. In this last example today, we've got Riffer loaded into Ableton, and I've got it tuned to an Egyptian C scale. I'm using all 4 of Riffer's sequencers, and I've assigned them all to play the Gentleman piano from Native Instruments. I spent quite a bit of time setting these up to play at different playback speeds so that each sequencer is playing a different octave range and playing a different speed. This ends up sounding pretty thematic and pretty cinematic. Check this out.